No, he is. He'll,
Would he be the one responsible?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's the way they have it.
You're hesitating. Agreed. So, you ask the board question. Board, we do something.
The thing is, yes, yeah.
What's your name? Yeah, Tim. What's your daughter or something? Okay, that's it. Now what? Now what? Now then? Yes, yes. Well, why do you come here? I come here because you can't have God on their side. How can you keep God on? You see, I mean, for example, you think you're on a crusade, save the world, enlighten the world. You can't be, no way. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but it's not right, but it is true. They give you 3 minutes every time. You do, you talk.
Generally, I usually.
No,
No, what are you trained? You're just trying. No,
I know why. No, that is not, terribly.
I'm doing well. How about you?
They said I was a danger.
I wasn't there. I went to minister to a family that day, so and I was in Hastings someplace. So I was praying for them. So it was good. Everybody had a good time. Good. Good. Well, that's what it was there for, basically. So I'm glad they had a good time. Yes, it is. Yeah. My pleasure.
I touched your nephew's schedule today. All I did was touch it because I was doing, they have 175. Yeah, none of them were in two classes, correct? So I had to go through, it never works. The system doesn't prioritize centers, so like, so then, yeah, the GL system, so then I have to go in and hand schedule those kids. So someone had already done this, I was like,
Next thing I find out.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. We'll call the meeting of the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education to order. If you would, please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Dr. Barnes, will you please call the roll?
Absolutely. Ms. Kirkendall?
here.
Ms. Dufort?
Here.
Mr. Shiflett?
Present.
Ms. Shannon?
Here.
Dr. Glassgill?
Present.
And President Smith?
Here.
All right, Mr. Quine is absent.
That's right. Okay, thank you. And next up, we have public comments. Ms. Shannon, would you please read our rules?
Sure thing. Persons may address the board for up to 3 minutes in the public comment segment of the meeting by providing your name and jurisdiction on one of the public comment forms provided at the sign-in table and turning it in to the superintendent's assistant. The meeting chair will use the public comment form submitted to invite persons to come forward to make their public comment at the appropriate time. Board meetings are constructed to conduct necessary business of the board while allowing time for the public to express concerns and opinions. Out of respect for board members, students, and staff, you will be interrupted if you personally attack a board member or district employee on issues unrelated to their job performance. Mention a student's name when discussing behavior or other incidents. Engage in discussion with other members of the audience. You will be reminded when you are approaching the end of your 3-minute limit so you can conclude with your strongest points. The board will not respond to questions or comments during public comment, but the superintendent will do his best to answer questions at the end of the meeting. If immediate answers are not available, arrangements will be made to provide you with the information requested.
Thank you very much. All right, first up, Samuel DiMaggio from Grand Ledge.
Thank you. If you've already done what I'm going to say, I apologize for wasting your 3 minutes. You know, 40 years ago, I moved into Grand Ledge, and at that time, Okemos and East Lansing were the top schools in the area, and I think they had been the top schools for as long as God has been around. But Grand Ledge was very close, and I was very proud of the fact that they were very close. And I would tell anybody I met that Grand Ledge was very close academically to Okemos and East Lansing. 40 years later, a little bit older, a little more gray hair, that doesn't seem to be the case. Okemos and East Lansing are still number 1 and 2 or 2 and 1, depending how you look. But Grand Ledge appears to have fallen down, to be a middle-of-the-pack type school. At least that's the general consensus of the people that I talk to, and probably most of them are old, so maybe they have a little bit different opinion than the average person. So at a meeting I had with, a so-called meeting I had with the superintendent, I asked him this question, if Grand Ledge schools had fallen down. And he said, I've been watching the wrong newspapers or the wrong magazines. I thought that was a strange response. That's all he said. And I thought that was a strange response. And I thought it was a disrespectful response to me. I've been paying taxes as subject to this school district for 40 years. Anyways, I looked, I researched, and I have the research rated here if somebody's curious about it. It looks to me that Grand Ledge has fallen down to the middle of the pack. Let's give you one. It said, I'll give you one. It says the high school is number 8, the Hayes is 9th, and Delta Center is number 18th, and I've never heard anybody say we're number 8. I've never heard that one before. But I don't think it's the fault of this board. I don't think it's the fault of the superintendent. You deal with the cards you're dealt. What I would like is for this board to put together some sort of report saying where Grand Ledge has come from, where they are now, where they're going to be 5 years, 10 years from now. Why can't we compete with the Okemos and the East Lansing schools in the area? Why can't we? We can do it in many other sports. And I want to tell you, you may say money is it, and I believe it probably is part of it anyways. But as you look through all these schools that are ranked higher than Grand Ledge, some of them are not rich schools. I would like to see the day when Grand Ledge has more Harvard graduates and more MIT graduates and more Yale graduates and Stanford graduates and Okemos Lansing, because then I could look at my wife, who was an Okemos graduate, and laugh. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would appreciate it if you could do that report within the near future.
Thank you. All right, that appears to be it for public comment this evening. And we're moving into our discussion items. And the first one is the superintendent's evaluation presentation on business and finance. Dr. Barnes.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to pull up my slides here. As we know, and for the purposes of the audience out there, each month I give a presentation on one element of my evaluation rather than doing it all at the end of the year. So this month it happens to be on business and finance. And I just want to say right up front that, that what is in this piece tonight is very much dependent upon our leadership team, and in particular Julie and her expertise, as well as our entire district leadership team. And so while I'm putting this in here, I want to make it clear that credit goes to everybody on our team. That includes our association leaders as well. All of our leadership groups have been a part of getting us into a good financial spot. And so I appreciate the work that everybody else has done, and want to make sure that caveat is said before I start talking about what we're doing in terms of finance. So the first one, budget development and management. To be highly effective, the superintendent ensures that budget actions are proactive and consider both current and long-range information and data. A balance is sought to meet the current and future needs of students and remain fiscally responsible to the community. So for the 22-23 school year, we turned a deficit into a surplus without cutting programs for students. So if you recall, our initial adopted budget for the 22-23 school year had a deficit, but by the time we got to our presentation in June, we actually had a little bit of a surplus. And again, that's credit to the work that everybody put into that. And then in addition, we presented a balanced budget for the 23-24 school year with minimal programmatic impacts. So there were a few, and there were some cuts we had to make and some things we had to change, but we were able to shore up what was a pretty sizable systemic budget deficit, and we're able to present a balanced budget. D2, budget reports. To be highly effective, the superintendent has a system in place for the monitoring and reporting of all budgetary and financial information to the board. Information provided is adequate and timely and outlines potential ramifications of any changes. Last year, we did a mid-year and end-of-year budget amendment that Julie did an outstanding job of preparing and bringing to you, and I provide budget updates in my weekly notes. I did that throughout the spring based on the information we had at the time. And then we've talked already this year about doing some more frequent formal budget updates rather than just the two, actually doing some more formal check-ins so we know where we are. In particular, you know, if you remember, the budget we adopted in June had flat enrollment, for example. You know, we'll want to give some updates after count day to know if it truly is flat or not. And so we're planning on doing some more frequent updates throughout the year this year. Financial controls. To be highly effective, the superintendent promotes appropriate financial controls, including third-party audits and reconciliation of accounts, and is proactive. Again, credit to Julie and her team in the business office. We have a sound audit process with successful audits, and Grand Ledge Public Schools as an entity has a great reputation for audits. Julie brings a great reputation personally with her to Grand Ledge as well, which further enhances that. So we will have an audit presentation to you in September based on this year's audit. We also have frequent CFO and superintendent meetings. Julie and I meet regularly and often involve members of cabinet that is impacted by various budget decisions. As a matter of fact, we have one tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to talk about staffing and a few other things that have popped up here in the last couple weeks. And then we have collective input and accountability from the district leadership team. And Ashley, I wrote the acronym DLT, but then put in parentheses afterwards, the district leadership team, yes. So our budget process this year started really in October, last October, where we were starting to look at where we were, and then we really got deep into it in January by providing some parameters for our budget process, and then we had budget meetings throughout the spring to get to the point where we could present a balanced budget. Facilities management, to be highly effective, the superintendent ensures that a facilities management plan is in place, includes current status of buildings and the need to improve facilities in the future with a projected plan to secure funding. So one of the things that we did last year around this time and into the fall was create the bond prioritization plan and then have followed through on that. So that plan is still posted on our website, and the projects that we have been completing up to this point have followed that plan, where the priorities are getting taken care of first, and then as money allows, other things are getting taken care of as well, but also as money prevents, there are some things that come off the bottom of that list. We're also working on long-term planning and facilities management plan with other members of COLT, which is our central office leadership team. Martez has put a lot of work into the thinking and the basis for that, and throughout this year, we'll continue to build that out, so something that we can share with the board and also share with the community. From a resource allocation standpoint, that's D5. To be highly effective, the superintendent ensures resources are distributed consistently based upon district goals and needs and seek to meet both immediate and long-range objectives. Our budget process for this year, and it will be for the 24-25 budget as well, involved all DLT members. So every member of the district leadership team, and there's 26 or 27 of us, all had a role to play, all had a piece of the budget that they were responsible for developing. And so they knew what their budgets were, and they knew what percentage of the overall budget it was, and then they knew what percentages of things they either had to cut or add based on that. The budget process was aligned to our strategic plan. So every budget conversation, we started with the strategic plan document to make sure that that was in the front of our mind. And then we created a set of budget process guiding questions, which I listed here for you. And these were brought up at every district leadership team meeting, which are, does this cut or add violate a collective bargaining agreement, a board policy, or other law or requirement? That's the first threshold. Number 2, does the cut or add directly impact students or student programming? Number 3, does the cut or add impact adults who directly impact students or student programming? And then number 4, or part D, does this cut or add impact the ease with which adults do their work, but does not fall into the category of number 2 and number 3 above? So as we started our budget process, we went from the bottom up when we were making cuts. So the things that hit D were the things that were cut first, and so on and so forth. And now when we, if we find ourselves in a position where we can add things back into the budget, it'll go from A down to D. So we'll start with student programming first and then make our way down to making the adult's life easier in the district. So that was the process, and those are the guiding questions we used in our budget discussions this spring. So that's it for budget and finance. That is section D of the evaluation. So are there any questions or comments or thoughts that anybody has for me?
Dr. Glasgow? Yes.
So we'll start with resource allocation. D, that word ease. I need an operational definition of that. And can you give me an example? So this is ease of the adults who do the work. And I understand if it doesn't fall into the other categories, A, B, or C, or it doesn't impact A, B, or C.
So this is the nice to have stuff. The things that if we had all the money in the world, these might be some things that we would want to have. So, you know, for example, we have, when we look at staff positions, for example, we budget for staff positions. we start with, okay, what's contractually obligated? What's best for kids? And then what's best for adults? And then there are some positions, and in this day and age, we don't really have any, that would simply make life easier for people. So for example, in the old days, you might have multiple hall monitors, or you might have multiple positions that are just there to help assist other adults in their work. And we haven't had those for a long time, primarily because of budget pieces. But it was important to note that if we had the money, we are not only providers of education, but we're employers. And so making sure that we're not only considering our student needs, but our adult needs as well. So this is, if we get to D, that's really considering adult needs. But that's why we do things in this order, that we're here to serve kids first. And we're here to be good employers. But there's a difference between good employers and having extra things that would be really nice to have.
So that might be a catch-all or something that we haven't thought of, because what you've described, for me, would fall under C. We want to make sure that the adults who are providing direct instruction have everything that they need in order to support the students, because that's the business we're in.
Absolutely.
And so D is sort of, I really don't know what that would be outside of C. But I understand what you're saying. It's a miscellaneous, just in case, let's have a category that
Correct.
doesn't fall under A, B, or C.
Yes.
The facilities management, looking at D4, will that plan include technology, or will there be a separate plan for replacement and?
So that's a separate category. So when we think about facilities management, facilities management's Martez's department. So
Right.
that's the custodials, the grounds, the operations, the building. And technology, because of the size of technology in our district, I see that as a separate plan. When we look at replacement cycles and we look at we have that as a plan, but rather than lumping them in together, because there's such an instructional piece that is built into that technology plan, which includes curriculum, which includes programming and all the different things that we have, that is a separate plan. But it's not listed in the, in D4. That's why I didn't get it, that's why it's not mentioned here. But we do have a plan for that as well. Mark and I have had conversations. And as we said, one of the things that will happen this year that's different than has happened in years past is once the school year gets off the ground, each month, one of our central office team members is going to be presenting on what their department does, what the work is that's happening in the department, and that's where the technology plan would fit. That's where, when Martez talks about operations, the operations plan would fit. And so while you probably could lump them together, because both of them are so big in our district, I think it makes sense to have two separate plans.
And I would agree. I'm thinking more from the standpoint of accountability. We're always going to track this because it's part of your evaluation.
Yep.
And so if it's part of your evaluation, part of the strategic plan, that means we will have regular reports on it. And that's really what I'm getting at.
Sure.
I think technology is important enough that it's something that we should be tracking. And if we're going to do that through presentations, that's great.
Yep.
As long as they're regular and
Yep.
we know where we are with the plan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, there is a technology month. I don't remember which month it is, but.
Great. Great. And probably more than February.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was just gonna mention, I feel like I've heard Dr. Glasgow mention this ideal of a technology plan at least a solid 6 times. And as much as I love her, I'm sick of hearing her talk about it. So if we can get that out sooner rather than later, and also get it added to the list of ongoing things that we're supposed, which isn't on this agenda, but the list of ongoing things that we're supposed to be working towards having available, that would be spectacular.
So I guess I would seek some clarification on that too, because, so the technology plan is a 5-year plan, right? Because we're one-to-one with devices. And so we have a replacement cycle that's mapped out for how we're gonna replace projectors and how we're gonna replace Chromebooks, now we're gonna, so I don't know if there'd be something to talk about every month. I guess that I would need some clarification on.
Sure.
On that, but, again, being that it's a long-term plan, I mean, certainly, we haven't talked, in my time as superintendent last year, we haven't talked about it here at all. And so we haven't talked about a lot of what these great folks do over here and what their plans are at all. So my thinking for this year was to get each of them their time, and so we know, and then from there, we're gonna have to figure out what is the right interval of time to have the next update, I think.
I don't think it needs to be something we do at every meeting.
Right.
But just the fact that she's asked for it for so many meetings and it still hasn't been presented and it wasn't on our list of things to just like update or things that we know we need to complete, I think that was where it should be added. But I think once the presentation is done, we could set, a cadence, if that's biannually, quarterly, annually, to review it. But I just think at this point, and I love Dr. Glasgow and I appreciate her tenacity for asking for things, but if I gotta hear about this technology report one more time, just one, so I just think we should get it out and available and then determine how often we need to hear about it.
Sure.
Well, and it sounds like just those things that Dr. Barnes just mentioned, the 5-year plan, the replacement cycle would that would help us kind of understand where we are, and then we can go from there. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Dr. Glasgow, just to have
You're
that?
both reading my mind, thank
No.
you.
Well,
Or so into your words, whatever comes first.
as we continue reading your mind, I also, to further clarify what we're talking about here, you've overall been talking about a strategic plan. Unless I'm not hearing you correctly, that is district-wide, and having had your experience on the board bond advisory group, is keeping track and making sure we're thinking ahead about district-wide, what's going to need replaced, what's going to need repaired, before it breaks and before it becomes an emergency.
Exactly. And so I'm accustomed to 5-year plans, however long the plan is, then becoming part of the budget process so that we can make sure that Mark has the budget that he needs in order to follow through on the 5-year plan, and that way we're being strategic. And so I'd just like to see a plan. It doesn't have to be a monthly report, but what does our plan look like? So that would be very helpful, as well as the facilities, because those are the two things that I asked about when I first did my tours and met with all of the cabinet members.
Sure.
And so I'm patient, but I agree with my colleague that she doesn't want to hear me say it again, and I don't want to say it again, but I would like to take a look at it. So D1, the long-range information that you mentioned under being proactive, that's where I would think that we would talk about diversity of funding streams, something that we talked about with Dr. Davenport, that we wanted to start looking at grants, private donors, so that in good times, and we're experiencing some good times, and I'm very optimistic about enrollment, we're preparing for when enrollment decreases, when the state of Michigan doesn't provide us with a per pupil foundation that I'm very glad we're getting at this point. So is that a fair assumption?
Yes, absolutely. And we've gotten some clarification since we were together last, and specifically since our June, when the budget was adopted, at where some of those funding streams are in this year's state aid budget, and then also the longevity of those funding streams. And so that'll be something that we'll be talking about in coming meetings as well. Again, as we look at doing more frequent budget updates, I think part of what I'm hearing too, if we only give you a budget update in twice a year, a lot of what you're talking about, we can't talk about everything. We could,
Right.
we could spend 3 hours going through the entire line by line budget, and we don't. So what I'm hearing you say is that maybe some of these interim budget updates, we should talk about some more of these specific things. Like, how are we gonna make sure that we have enough buses in 3 years? Like, we have a plan for that, and Julie's really good about mapping that out. How are we gonna make sure that when these Chromebooks meet the end of their life, that we have more Chromebooks? And again, we have a plan for that. We just don't always bring it here in those higher level budget projections. But what I'm hearing is throughout the course of the year, having that type of specific conversation would be useful to them.
Absolutely. It would be for me. And I'm not talking line by line. I have to do that in my day job. But at a very, very high level, to know what the plan is for those things over the next 5 years.
Sure.
Whatever we've set up as the life of the plan would be very helpful because it's so connected to the budget.
Sure. Okay.
Yep. Thank you. This was very helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Other comments or discussion on this presentation? Ms. Kirkendall?
Yes, hi. I would also just like to elevate, I appreciate the points that Dr. Glasgow is raising, but as Dr. Barnes has mentioned, some of these things are happening in conversations. There are already plans with the district leadership team or the central office leadership team. And if there are questions about what that looks like, that people can reach out to Dr. Barnes or the superintendent's office to also get that update. So I don't want to create a space where, you know, it could be assumed that there's negligence or misrepresentation of information. It exists. We just haven't had it here at this level, which we do think would be valuable. But in the meantime of us getting to that space, if the public has questions about what that looks like, they can contact Dr. Barnes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we are well organized here and have these things set up. So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we're happy to answer any of those questions. But again, what I am hearing from this conversation is that you'd like a little bit more of that information at board meetings in the future, and so we can definitely set that up for sure.
Well, and I appreciate you not wanting to overburden us with minutia, and I think we don't want, as Dr. Glasgow says, we don't want to get into operations, and I think we also don't want to micromanage, but I think, you know, so much of it, I think we're very fortunate that we've got this team of folks who has a plan, who's got everything situated, and I don't think that we as a board want to feel like we're on autopilot and just assuming all is kind of taken care of,
Sure.
because I guess I kind of do assume that. I do assume it's all taken care of because you all do have plans. And just to be candid, you know, we are not facing crises. We are not facing things that are changing every single moment. We are in a situation right now where we can give these things that deserve this time attention, the time and attention that they deserve. And so I agree with everything that everybody has said. Give us the information. We're happy, you know, you are not overburdening us in this moment. I might regret saying that. Sorry, fellow board members, but it is nice to be able to talk to folks out in the community and answer questions and things like that and sound knowledgeable, because you do plenty of that in your day job. When we run into folks on the soccer field or out at Meyer, to be able to say, oh yeah, well that's part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. When people are like, oh, my kid's Chromebook. Well, you know what? You know, it's all in a 5-year cycle, and by the time they're in this grade, it's going to be brand new, and you know how these things go. So I think that would be helpful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else? That's great. Thank you, Dr. Barnes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, continuing our discussion items, we have our strategic plan update. And I think that's your presentation as well.
It is. So actually, this conversation is a nice segue into the strategic plan. One of the things that's been really important for us as a leadership team and me as a superintendent is that the strategic plan was a living document that didn't just get done and put on a shelf. That we were actually doing the work, we were actually tracking the work, and we're able to give you an update. So that's what this represents tonight. So as a reminder, the strategic plan that we developed a year ago in May had these components to it. Our mission and vision, growing learners and preparing students. And then our vision is Grand Ledge Public Schools will provide every student a high-quality education, critical thinking skills, and social development to reach their highest potential in a safe and inclusive environment. And then We had 6 belief statements. We believe all students can learn. We believe it's the role of the school district to provide support and access for all students. We believe in an inclusive environment where every person is valued. We believe the GLPS staff are professionals who are vital to the health and future of the Grand Ledge community. We believe in a safe and inclusive environment where students can explore their interests and learn the skills they need to thrive in their communities. And we believe in partnerships between the family, community, and education stakeholders for the success of GLPS. And then we had 5 focus areas, which included academics and programs, learning environment and culture, communication and community engagement, personnel and leadership, and then operations. And so then embedded within those 5 focus areas, the board approved a set of SMART goals for the next 3 years from the 22-23 school year, 23-24, and then 24-25. And so we developed those SMART goals throughout the fall last year, and so we really didn't start trying to implement them until January. But given that, I think we did pretty well. We had 34 goals identified across those 5 areas. 20 of them we achieved. 11 are in progress, and then we had 3 that we haven't achieved yet, primarily just because of the timing of that in January. So if you are interested, you can click on the link that's in your board packet, and it will take you to the specific goals for 22-23, and those are highlighted, and I know it's tough to see up there on the screen, but those are highlighted in the colors according to whether or not they've been achieved. So for example, excuse me, our district-wide achievement goals were all achieved. And those are listed there, which represent M-STEP growth, NWA growth, and reduction in failure rates. So when we have questions about whether or not Grand Ledge Public Schools is achieving academically, we have evidence here in our strategic plan that yes, we are, and that the goals that we set for ourselves, we are actively meeting. I also attached in each of the, in this document for you, a list of the evidence that we're using to say whether we achieve this goal or not. And so then you can take a look too that we're not just making it up, we actually really did achieve those goals, and there's the evidence established. So red means we didn't achieve it. That's one of the 3 that we didn't achieve. Orange means it's in process. So for example, number 2 under the high school, by the end of the 22-23 school year, we'll identify learning gaps for our freshmen and embed the tier development. So that's in progress because we've tracked the data, but we haven't fully implemented the interventions yet. And so that's something we'll carry forward into the 23-24 school year. But for the sake of time this evening, I'm not going to go through every single one of these. You can certainly look through them, but again, they're color-coded and they have the evidence. So after our meeting tonight, we'll post this on our strategic plan page so that the community can look and see which goals we've achieved and which ones we have not as well. And so, again, credit to the teams of people that help to achieve these goals through our district school improvement team primarily. The other thing that I have here for you is some perception data. This is, we asked parents at the end of the year to rate the 5 areas embedded with our strategic plan and how we're doing as a school district. And so the first one of those was just a general overall statement of how things were going, where 1 is poor and a 5 is outstanding. So you can see that about 82% of our families rated us as good or outstanding, so 4s and 5s, which is great. Academics and programs, that first focus area from our strategic plan goals, we had about 80% again that said we were doing well or outstanding in terms of academics and programs. And then we also had parent school improvement team input. So as you know, last year we had multiple meetings with our parent school improvement team, and I asked them to provide some input around each of our strategic plan focus areas as well. And so this is the input that they gave us. So for academics and programs, they noted that there are variations in goals across the buildings. And as we talked about last year, that was purposeful because it was based on the data that the schools individually had and what they were working with, and so they set goals accordingly. The data shows that there are some gaps in learning, particularly with students with lower scores. And again, that's why that's a goal area, so we continue to work on that. The parent school improvement team did identify that we need some additional programming for our higher achieving students. and clear communication about existing programs. And so that's something we'll work on this year, particularly communication about existing programs. Clear communication from all grade levels about what students are learning. This will be in our second August meeting. We'll actually be bringing you curriculum guides and all of our essential learnings, K-8. They're still in development at the high school, but our K-8 ones are done, and so we'll be sharing that with the board and the community at the end of August. Practical skills need to be included and more focus on other aspects of schooling, including wellness, kindness, sharing, determination, happiness, and et cetera, which actually matches some of our upcoming SMART goals for the 23-24 school year. When we think about the environment and culture in the school district, 74% of our families said that it was either good or outstanding. So that's, again, an area of strength. Our parent school improvement team input, there was a note, and I'll talk about this in just a minute, making sure that our logo represents the culture and includes camaraderie, sharing, manners, health, etc. Success means happy, healthy kids. Parents are looking forward to seeing our new, the new logo, and I'll talk about that again in just a second. And hope is taught as part of social emotional learning lessons, and ask that we define diversity. So again, these were just the notes from the parents. We have defined that. It's on our strategic plan page underneath our SMART goals, but I did want to share exactly what our parents shared with us. In terms of communication and community engagement, again, we were over 85% thought that we're doing a good or outstanding job with communication and community engagement. For our parent school improvement team around this, they said our celebrations are different for every student, so we need to celebrate students as wholes and as individuals. More class-wide celebrations, a focus on good deeds, art, and STEAM, along with academics and athletics. They said email is effective for communication, but for how often and from whom needs to be defined. Things need to be explained, like what NWA is. Communication plans need to be transparent, speak to all audience, and be consistent. Friday communications from the superintendent are appreciated, and we need to communicate about district goals. And so we will, again, some of these are baked into our SMART goals for this year. Some of these we've achieved as well. And then personnel and leadership, again, we're at about 79%, said we were good or outstanding in terms of our personnel and leadership. And our operations department, we had about 74% said operations, buildings, grounds, transportation, and bond were good or outstanding as well. And so John just went to stand up. If you remember, one of our SMART goals was that we were going to incorporate Winky into a district-wide poster that showed our commitment to creating an inclusive environment. And so that is the poster over there. And what you can see at the bottom are the submissions of students. So the original plan was to have students submit them and then have the district vote on which one they liked best. But after running it through our EDIC group, and after running it through our district school improvement team, and then our district leaders, they felt like all of them were very different, all of them were very good, and all of them needed to be included. And so, so we did include all of them, and we asked the school community to vote at the end of the school year about which one they liked best, and in terms of the slogan. So we had comments welcome all, or comments welcome everyone. And so comments welcome all was the by far the one that people liked best. And so we have those now. Each school in the district will have one of those to hang up in the school. So so that's again one of those things that was a concrete goal that was achieved, and we have one up there so you can see it and take a look on your way out. But as we look ahead to next year, the 23-24 school year, we already have developed the goals. You've already approved those goals, so we're not behind the 8 ball like we were this year, trying to develop them in September, August, and September, October, and November. And so those goals can be found here as well. And so the other thing that we do have to keep in mind is we have 14 orange and red ones from 22-23. So those will get incorporated in. Most of them are in progress. And quite honestly, a couple of the orange ones, the reason they're orange is because buildings set 3-year goals. So we're only in year 2 of a 3-year goal, so we can't say we achieved it yet because we have to get there. So, so overall, I think this is a source for celebration. We're going to share this on opening day. A lot of work by our leadership team, a lot of work by our district school improvement team, a lot of work by our building level teams to actually get these things implemented and off the ground. So I certainly invite you to go through and read the documents that are color-coded with the evidence and all those pieces. Again, for the sake of time tonight, I'm not gonna go through each one of those. But if you have questions that pop up, let me know. I would also offer the same, obviously, it's gonna be posted on the website. So if community members have questions about any of them, they're certainly free to reach out and ask for those as well. So I pause there for questions or comments about that work over the last year.
So you have, I'm sneaking in first this time because I didn't get to last time. I'm in the color-coded document. I don't have, not a specific item. I'll read through those, and this has been very helpful. So to confirm, if it's been met, the next line is evidence demonstrating how that's been achieved.
Yep.
These next steps for those that are in process or have not been met are up-to-date next steps.
Correct.
That are ongoing now for incorporation in the upcoming year.
Correct. Yes. So next steps would be where we are in the process of actually working to achieve that goal. So just because it's orange and red doesn't mean it's going to drop off. It just means that we have more work to do. Sure. So green, all the green ones, it says evidence, and then what the evidence is that it was achieved. And then all the red and orange says next steps and what we're actively working on to make sure that those become green by the time we give you the next update.
I really,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's a lot here. Have any of these throughout the course, I actually had thought at some point you might be back to clarify some of them, saying that this goal isn't hitting the mark the way it's written. As we've dug into this and tried to implement it, we think we need to go a different direction or clarify what that means. I don't know if any of that's happening or so far the framework has been acceptable.
So far, it's worked. So far, we have not run into a goal that we either can't achieve or don't think is worthy of trying to achieve. The red and orange ones, I can't say that with absolute certainty, right? I mean, we may try to implement those next steps and still run into trouble and say, well, either A, there's a reason this isn't working,
Right.
or B, this is not something that we're gonna actively pursue anymore, and here's why. But at this point, I think, because really we haven't had these goals for a year yet, because again, it was
Right.
December that they were approved, and we really started working on them in earnest in January. And so I think after having a full calendar year to work on them, I think we'll have a better sense of that. And I think it would be appropriate to do another one of these updates in December, and then to do another one of these. I would see these as quarterly updates. This being now the first time I've given this, there's a structure for it, and I can continue to update it and continue to update you. But as it stands right now, all the goals that we approved for 22-23 back in December, we're continuing to actively pursue. Now, the 14 orange and red ones, that might change sometime between now and December once we go back and revisit things.
And at the risk of, I don't want to create busy work, but we've seen a snapshot as of August 14th, 2023 of what's green, orange, and red, and it would be great to see like the change from this date. Not just, right, if 5 more are green the next time we meet, I'm sure I'm not going to remember which ones weren't green
Sure.
tonight.
Yes.
But if we could just throw that out there.
That's a great point. I can just easily copy the document, and then when I give the next, I can indicate which ones changed to green.
Sure, okay. That was it for me. To you, if
No,
anybody.
I just wanted to say, I really appreciate this format. This is really helpful to me. I think that, like you pointed out, these were just approved in December. And being where we are with the green, orange, and red tells me that I think the goals were set in an appropriate manner, because you don't want to, just get low-hanging fruit and say, congratulations, we did what we've been doing all along. You want to find stuff that's going to kind of challenge you and be a little bit, more difficult. And so I think we can get there. And I appreciate, too, that we didn't fudge it, that we didn't say, well, we're kind of there, because really, if you look at it, I feel like this was a very candid look at where we are with the goals. And I think that's going to help us get where we want to be. So if this were to be something that we're quarterly or whatever is appropriate, this kind of format is extremely helpful to me, at least, in trying to figure out where we are, especially with the evidence and the next steps. And I just want to thank everybody for their hard work on this, because you've clearly been relentless in the best possible way at trying to accomplish these goals.
Thank you. And we don't get better by pretending we achieve their goals,
Yeah.
right? So,
And I would just like to add that I feel the same way. Nicole stated it very nicely, that this is a really helpful document, not only to board members, but I think it's something that anyone in the community can look at and actually get very good information and understand what's going on and how those things relate to the strategic plan. And just the fact that we have that document and we're able to connect very clearly to each of those goals, to me, puts the district in a much better position than it's been in some time, because you have your accountability built right in. And when it's as simple as concise as this document that we're looking at, it makes it extremely valuable document, I think, for everyone that's interested in what's going on within our district. So I just wanted to, again, say thank you for that format and for the work that's been done to think about how much has been accomplished on these goals in that short term is something to, be proud of as well. But knowing we will always have more work to do, right? So I just, again, appreciate the work.
thank you.
So I have a couple things. Echo everything that's already been stated. You don't need me to say it again. On slide, what is this? 12. This is the family perceptions around our operations. This did not come with a slide that had that parent-student input, parent group input, whatever that's called. I forgot it already.
Yep.
Is there a reason that slide doesn't have a detailed explanation? Because we recognize, Martez, I love you, but grounds and operations, bus routes, and adventure clubs, that's an ongoing conversation. So was there a reason that there wasn't a slide detailing that?
We ran out of time in the Parent School Improvement team.
Okay.
So, the way I structured it, the first meeting was to really explain how the school improvement process worked and our strategic plan and all those pieces. And then we dedicated a meeting to celebrating success and communication. We dedicated a meeting to academics and programming. And then we had our final meeting, we tried to cover the last three. So operations and leadership and personnel. And so we did an activity where the parents rotated around and gave input on each one. But it all ended up taking longer than what I had anticipated. And so they didn't get to the last two to give feedback. So that's why we've only got feedback on three of them. Because the last two, the activity I had planned took way too long. And so we didn't get viable feedback on those other two. So this year, we've already got the parent school improvement date set. And so we're going to, I will have, now having done it a year, I'll have a better idea of how to structure that. So I'll have that information for next year.
Awesome.
So I have a bunch of blank documents with these on it, so that doesn't, they didn't get to it.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. And the second thing is I really do appreciate the outline for the goals. And I noticed in each of these, well, in that one document, there's a goal for each building, it appears to be. When the schools come and do their presentation, I think it would be fantastic for them to incorporate concepts or strategies of what they're doing at their building to support that strategic goal, right? Like, I would like to hear from them, not just from you. You're fantastic, love you, Dr. Bars. But I would love to hear what that ownership and what those action items look like in their buildings to accomplish these strategic plans. And if they're coming across any challenges or hurdles or things where we could offer more support, what that could look like, not just at the 50,000-foot view, but also at the 500-foot view. So I would like to see them incorporate that.
Okay, excellent. Yep, we can do that for sure. And I do, those strategic plan goals by building are baked into our teacher evaluation process as well. And so, and this year we're even tightening the alignment between the strategic plan, our instructional processes, and our professional learning plan.
This may have just settled that question. Is it your plan, was it to bring the schools back again so this is sort of an annual basis to make it through each of the schools and make sure they're represented and to present to the board?
Yep,
Okay.
we have a document, a sign-up document that they'll fill out. We have our first district leadership team meeting think it's the 23rd, maybe, it's sometime next week. And so they'll sign up for their months. And then actually, we're gonna be even a little bit better this year, and we're gonna correspond the month the school presents with the artwork in the hallway. So when Holbrook presents, it'll be Holbrook's art in the hallway. When the high school presents, it'll be the high school's artwork in the hallway. So that way, families can see that all at once.
That's great.
Yep.
Anything else? Dr. G?
Thank you. So my head is spinning, because I know how heavy this lift is. And I'm trying to balance the work that I'm doing, because I have to be in the weeds. We're at the end of our strategic plan refresh at the college. We added a year in order to give us enough time to prepare for our new strategic plan. So pardon me if I show my ignorance in not reviewing documents enough to have the answers to the questions I'm about to ask. And so this is excellent work. And I just have a few questions and a couple of statements. One statement would be, I would not recommend that we revisit the plan that the board approved. We've approved it. And whatever changes that need to be made in order to be fair to staff need to be made when we do our next plan.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make that statement, my recommendation, because we don't want to keep moving the target. And quite frankly, the board approved the strategic plan with everything that went along with it. Mm-hmm. The qualitative information is very, very helpful. And I'm not sure if our key performance indicators, so this is where I'm going to show my ignorance, set measurables for family perceptions where we agreed that if we were below a certain percentage, that is not 4 and 5, for example, I think 29%, I think anything above 15% for that 3, that's kind of average, is high enough to warrant drilling down. And so my question is, do we plan on drilling down, and is there a certain percentage that we're saying, if we don't have that percentage between 4 and 5, we really want to take a hard look in terms of why we have 29%, for example, for, what is it? I'm just hypothetically throwing. The overall experience at GLPS. That's the very, very first one.
Sure. So first of all, I would say my threshold, thinking from an MTSS lens, is 80%. So if we're hitting 80% with our first best work, then I think we're pretty good. And there's a couple of these that are not at 80%, right? There's a couple of these that are a little bit lower than that. And so so one of the things that's important to note about, I mean, these were high. This is exactly how it was asked, right? So please rate your overall experience at GLPS this year from 1 to 5. And we did this at the end of the school year. And so in order to figure out why that, what happened with the other 20%, a little less than 20%, it's interesting to know. And one of the things that all of our administrators across the district, and I talked about at the end of the school year, was how are we gathering data from our constituents, from our kids, from our parents, from our community, and then how are we using that data to impact our work, and then how are we then showing evidence of those changes we've made with the data we've gathered. That's a heavy emphasis in our current administrator evaluation tool. And I used with many of our folks, even this is an example, like we asked, we didn't get a ton of responses. And we didn't get really specific information. And so collectively, as a district leadership team this year, one of the things that we're all going to be working on through our principal professional learning and then through our district leadership work is how do we effectively gather information that's actionable, and then how do we use that actionable information to make changes, and then how do we show evidence that we've made the appropriate changes based on that. And so that was a deep conversation, honestly, with all of our administrators during our evaluation process. And I even I didn't do that very well here, right? I asked some questions, I got some data, and we're sharing that data. But now to be able to say, well, we're gonna make the experience for the threes better, I don't have data in this set that allows me to do that. So that's the work over the next year that we're collectively going to be doing to better gather that data, to better act on that data, and to ensure that everyone has a voice. So one of the things I didn't include in all this, because there were a lot of them, was the kind of free comments, right? People, there was a blank at the end where people could say what they wanted to say. And a lot of it was really positive. Overwhelmingly, it was positive, which is represented in these bar graphs. But some of the things that popped up in that were, I wish I would ask these questions more often. I wish other people would ask these questions. I wish I had a chance to share this with this person. And so I think there's a need for us as a district to do a better job of getting perception data that is actionable and on a more regular basis. Like, we can't just ask it in June when everybody's on their way out the door for the summer and pat ourselves on the back for the 80% that we've got and ignore the 20% that we don't. But to answer your question right now in this moment, I don't have that yet. But yet's the key word, because I think that is some emphasis that we have to put on moving forward. Because if we're not asking for feedback, that doesn't change people's feeling about the school district, right? They still have it. And as a matter of fact, then some of those things get more entrenched and more exacerbated because they don't have an outlet and because people aren't seeing changes that we're making based on their feelings about things.
Thank you. That's the answer that I was looking for. Not that it has to be contained in the information that you're providing us, but that there's a plan. And as soon as you said 80%, I remember you had already shared that that's where we were setting. That's our key performance, and that's the measurable, and that's great. So thank you, I appreciate that. My last question deals with community, and you touched on measuring our community engagement. And I know anecdotally, our community has seen a difference in how engaged and how much you specifically are in the community. How did we give our community an opportunity? Did we use the same parent information in order to determine how well we're doing on that part?
So this went out to the Friday email list, which includes all of our families and then any community members who have signed up to receive those communications. Excuse me, we didn't delineate in here which one you were. And we need to continue to expand that, that group of who's in that group. We've got pretty decent participation, but it's a big community and we don't have enough participation. I think there's merit to thinking too. You know, I think in one of my earlier evaluation slideshows, I shared all the different organizations I'm part of. I think we need to do a better job of leveraging those relationships to actually get authentic feedback about how the district is doing from the perspective of those community groups, because they do represent wide swaths of our community in varying ways, right? The people in Rotary are not the same people in Lions, they're not the same people in the Chamber, they're not the same people in C3R, they're not the same people in Eaton Community Health, they're not the same people in CAPCAN. And so figuring out how to better leverage those relationships to get more authentic feedback. And you know, I think we got a lot of good feedback on the frequently asked questions page. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. It's not in this slideshow, but I have another survey that I did with staff and with families about communication and about how well we're communicating and about what works and what doesn't work. That will actually be shared with families in my first Friday family communication, the feedback on that, which again is an attempt to say, okay, we asked you for some data, you gave it to us, here's what it was, here's how we're gonna act on it. So to start to better create that loop. It had nothing to do, with the specific areas, which is why I didn't put it in here. It certainly is embedded under communication, and community engagement, but that's a data set for a different day, I think.
Sure. Excellent. Thank you very much. This is very, very helpful, and I'm glad we're having these conversations.
Me too.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Absolutely.
Just as we close the loop on this, these are the raw numbers of responses, right?
Correct.
So, while it looks like 11% on the slide you have up now, that's 23 responses out of a district of almost 5,000 students too,
Correct.
right? So I'm hesitant to say that this is representative of how,
Yeah.
23 for 11% of our community thinks it's average.
Right.
11% of the 150 or so people,
Yeah,
100 or 200 people feel that way.
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I don't mean to dissuade any of the follow-up work or the digging down, but part of the process is maybe, with a district that large, the more responses, the better.
Yeah, and we have to get better engagement with, even with gathering the data, right? I mean, because as you point out, this is not a huge data set. So,
Anything else?
And I'll just say, as we know, if you get 10% on any kind of research you're doing, great. And we definitely should try, but it is so hard to get.
I was thankful anybody responded.
Exactly. Well, I was thankful to see over 200.
Yeah, that's right. That's fair. Okay, I think that gets us through to our 5th item, our action items. So things will get a little more active. And first up is approval of our July 10th, 2023 regular meeting and closed session minutes, if there is a motion.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the July 10th, 2023 regular meeting minutes and closed session minutes as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Fort and support by Ms. Shannon. And any discussion there? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0. Next up, one of our favorite topics, first, important, I don't mean to make light of it, but certainly a process. First reading of our next set of policies, Neola board policies, the 5,000 level, entitled Students.
As the secretary, I definitely move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education waive the first reading of Neola Board Policies 5,000 students.
Support.
Thank goodness. Ms. Shannon moves and is supported by Dr. Glasgow. Any discussion there or comments?
Nicole, are you sure you don't want to go through and read word by word for 115 pages?
I just got my voice back, so.
I mean, this board is really committed to transparency, and I think that it might be good for everyone to hear it.
Hear you, hear you.
Certainly, everyone has access to read along.
Yes, feel free to read along.
Yeah. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That definitely passes 6-0. That's great. And now we're into, as Mr. Shiflett used to say, we're paying the bills.
I'm sorry, can I add one thing on, one thing on item B? Just for the board's note, in your board package, policies 5330 and 5342, you'll notice those are skipped in your set of policies. Those are going to be added to the first reading of the 6,000s. And the reason for that is after the governance committee met, those dealt with some healthcare and medication issues. Cindy Brummett, our school nurse, reviewed those and actually had some what could be substantive changes to those. And so since we had not reviewed that as a governance committee first, we pulled those. We're going to review them when we do the 6,000s, and then we'll include those when we do the first reading of the 6,000s at a later date.
Mr. President, not to, step on a lot of things and delay things, but did you want to discuss the 5,000 amendment policies, or did you want to
We have, so we've waived the reading, that's right. We should,
But I know you wanted to
the
have-
governance committee has met and reviewed these drafts, right, on our
Yes.
way to approving a complete set. Yeah, that'd be great. Who, want to remind me who's on that committee?
Sure. It's
Dr.
Dr. Glasgow,
Glasgow.
myself, and Mr. Quina. Fortunately, I think, assuming that this is what folks want to do, and I think it does make sense to do this, otherwise, when we go through the 6,000s, it would be exceptionally long. And these ones are mostly statutory, and I don't think that we have that much.
That's right.
So what I'm saying is, I think this is going to be an easy one, comparatively easy, folks, if we want to do this.
Well, and I appreciate Mr. Shiflett slowing us down. This is the usual process. We
Yes.
waive the reading, but if you have met and do have a few changes that you want to highlight, this would be the time to do that. And Ms. Shannon, you spoke first. I don't know if you want to start, whoever has the first comment.
She always does such an
Yeah.
amazing job.
Thank you.
Attorneys
Yes,
do.
we do love hearing the sounds of our own voices, so.
And I think we're just rolling through the ones that the group has changes on as opposed to.
Yes, and really, and of course, folks, feel free to stop us along the way. I see
Yep.
some eyebrows being raised, ready with some comments, so that's excellent. But most of these are statutory, and so we really didn't have that much by way of suggestions, but I'll go through them. The 5111 eligibility, we didn't have anything there, nor did we have anything on the 5111.01. Nothing on the 5111.02. Or on the 5111.03. Nothing on 5111.12. I'm sorry, 5112, yeah, I've got to come up. 5,113, nothing there. Or on the 5,113.01. I think we discussed a little bit the 5120, the assignment within the district, but ultimately concluded we didn't have any proposed changes there. Nothing on the 5130. I'm just waiting till I get to the point where Ms. Dufort has something that we missed, which I appreciate, because I know there's always going to be something. Nothing on the 5200 or on the 5215. Nothing on 5223 or 5230. Nothing on the 5310 or 5320 or 5330 or the 5330.01. Nothing on 5331 or 5335.
No, that's the one, that's one of the ones.
That was the one that was pulled? Okay, I apologize. I figured we were getting into the things that got pulled.
No, 5330 or 5342.
Okay.
And just to note, 5331, we just added language that says the district's in compliance with USDA will provide substitute meals to food allergic students and students with known medical conditions that require dietary accommodations. That was the one change we made to that one.
Thank you.
And to 5330.01,
Yes.
we removed EpiPen and put in
Epinephrine, yes.
epinephrine autoinjectors. Thank you.
Yes.
Because EpiPen is a brand,
Yes.
not a medication.
I was very happy to see that. That was one of the pieces I wanted to
Yes.
note, so thank you for that.
5335 included a sub-F with other medical conditions known to impact a student's major life activities, and that's basically the ADA definition. And then if you go down to the second page of 5335, the sub-D up at the top would include school nurse as that group of folks. Here, nothing on the 5340.01. We follow the concussion rules. Nothing on the 5341 or the 5343. We didn't have anything on 5350 or 5410 or 5420. Nothing on 5421 or 5430, or 5451. Nothing on 5460 or 5463. Nothing on 5464. And I am flying through these, but we did have very good conversations during the governance committee and in our conclusions that we didn't really need to change these proposals.
What, right, and I want to, everyone, these are attendance requirements and graduation requirements
Yes.
and communications with respect to a student's medical issues. These are all heavily governed by state
statute,
law
yes.
and privacy rules, so it's not for us to change how we think
Yes.
those things should be addressed.
Exactly. Nothing on the 5510 or the 5512. Nothing on the 5513 or 5514.01.
I have a note on that.
Great.
And it's not anything that you guys did or didn't do. I think they left a word out.
Oh, okay.
On the fourth paragraph, any student who does not possess a valid motorcycle safety education certificate will be allowed to ride. I think it needs, it's supposed to say will not be allowed to ride.
I think you're correct. Yes, I don't think that.
Unless we're taking a really lax approach.
You can only ride a motorcycle if you aren't certified. Yes,
Yeah,
I don't think that was the
so,
intention.
Yeah, and
Yes.
how that popped out, I have no idea, but
No.
it just happened
Well,
when I
thank you
was
for that close
scanning
reading.
through, yeah.
Yes, I think we can probably reach a consensus that, yes, indeed, if you are riding a motorcycle, we want you to have the appropriate qualifications to do that. Especially in our brand-new parking lot that looks beautiful. Okay. Nothing on 5515.01 or 5516 or 5517. I'm going through because I do know on some, okay, this is the one, yes, 5517. This is one where it's the same general comment we've had before about updating the contact information with names and titles and things like that. I knew it was lurking in here.
Yep.
Yep.
Nothing on 5517.01 or 5520. We did have a good discussion about that, but ultimately concluded we were comfortable as it was. Nothing on 5530 or 5540. Nothing on 5600. Nothing on 5605 or 5610. Actually, I take that back. So on 5610, we did not have any suggestions in terms of policy changes, but we did have a discussion about more clearly defining what the expulsion process looks like in terms of what's expected from the board, but also to clarify for parents. Unfortunately, it's not something that has come up for this board much, but we did discuss wanting to have kind of a more defined process for what it looks like when there is an expulsion that is appealed to the board in terms of how that conversation is conducted and how that meeting goes with the parents. And so I think that's something that we're working on, because I think it's been a little bit informal, I guess, in terms of the conversations, and it might benefit from a little bit more clarity and formality in terms of making clear when board members can ask questions, when everybody has the opportunity to present their sides and their testimony and things like that. And so that was something, at least within the governance committee, we felt like would benefit everybody, students, parents, the board, the community, to make sure everybody understands what everybody's rights and responsibilities are at that stage. So there's nothing inappropriate with what we're doing now, but it might be, everybody likes to understand the process before they walk in the door, and so that's something that we can, tighten up a little bit.
So that's within the due process portion of this.
Yes.
We felt like what this district does now fits within what we're about to approve or what we
Yes.
waived.
And so that would be, that's essentially the situation where there's a long-term suspension or expulsion that's decided by the superintendent, but it is appealed to the board.
Right.
And it's something that I think we've I think that Ms. Kirkendall hasn't had to go through it all. The rest of us, at least I've only had to go through it once since my time on the board, but kind of clarifying what that process looks like. Because it's our understanding that some places, because like I said, there's nothing inappropriate with how we're handling it, but everybody might benefit from understanding, okay, you know, the administration's gonna kind of present their side, the student and their parents or their advocate is gonna present their side. This is when it's gonna be time for the board to ask any questions, and then this is gonna be the process for the board to make their decision. Because right now, it's just kind of more of a conversation, I guess, is kind of how it's been, you know, in terms of the board asking for information and both sides presenting their kind of piece. But perhaps we might want to add some more clarity to what that looks like. And so that's not really changed this policy, but more of a kind of an administrative guideline type. I mean, I don't think it's in the administrative guidelines, but more of our own internal process in terms of developing what we want that to look like. So that's just more of an FYI on this.
Sure.
So, to be continued. Nothing on the 5610.02. We were trying to figure out with the 5611, since that seemed kind of to duplicate. And thank you for getting that response from Neola, that it's not really necessary. It was really meant to reiterate more than anything else. And so I guess my thought would be just to delete 5611, since it seems superfluous.
Because this is just restating the due process portion of
Yes.
student discipline.
Exactly.
I would agree.
Okay.
I agree as well.
So in getting the clarification, we did find out
Yes.
that we're allowed to.
Yes, in fact, yeah, Neola
Delete.
told us that this is not necessary. It was
Right.
mostly for emphasis. And then the same is true for the next section, which is 5630.
Yep.
Because that does the same thing. It just reiterates the same policy from earlier on. And Neola advised that it would be okay not to include it as a separate policy because it's already in the rest.
It's redundant.
For 5630, I'm definitely in agreement that we don't need it.
Yes,
Having had conflicts arise that hinged specifically on due process and what a due process hearing looked like,
yeah,
I do like spelling out what is the due process right in a way that's very clear, even if duplicative. As long as it's not contradictory, I kind of would prefer that we keep 5611. But I'm fine with getting rid of corporal punishment.
Okay.
Everybody knows you can't spank a kid.
sure. Well, 56, so the reason why I'm in favor of deleting 5611 is because you get the exact same language in 5610.
That's what I was just,
And so I agree this language needs to be in policy. I don't think it needs to be in policy twice.
No, but I do like how clear it is when it's separated out specifically and we can point to it individually and say, this is it. This is what it boils down to in its truest, purest form.
Okay.
But like, I'm also not married to it. I mean, it's in there, but, and even then, it's probably just like more of an emotional reaction to the fact that we've had due process concerns in the past.
Well, and that seems to be Neola's reasoning, is they didn't do it because they didn't say it. They did it because they wanted it to say, this is really, really important, folks. I think that all policy, that's like saying, like, this law is really important. Well, aren't they all important? I mean, that's kind of how I feel about policy.
They're not all equally.
So I guess.
I'm fine moving on.
Okay.
With the deletion.
With the deletion of both.
Yeah, I just
50s.
wanted to like.
That's fair. That's an
voice my
understanding. Yes.
desire to have it in its purest truest.
Oh, that's understandable. So deleting 5611 and deleting 5630 because Neola has advised that these are duplicative and it is not necessary to include. Okay. 5630.01. We did not have any, we had a very long discussion, but we did not have any changes.
So very.
Well, and this is one that is not directly from statute, and it's not, and it is similar to, but not exactly the same as the Michigan Department of Ed. But again, we had a very good discussion about it, and we felt like it covered everything we wanted it to cover. Nothing on 5710. Nothing on 5720.
Can I pause there?
Yes, please.
So this is a total me thing, but I feel the need to say it anyway. Second paragraph references disruptive tactics.
Are we on 5720? or
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
5720, sorry,
Okay.
under student
Yes.
activism. It references in the second paragraph disruptive tactics. And for all intent and purposes, activism is a disruption to
Yeah.
status quo. So I am a little leery of leaving disruptive tactics without defining what that looks like, because the very nature of activism is disrupting a status quo.
Well, I think that's, I think what's,
Kids have a limited First Amendment right inside of the schools.
well, I think that's actually
If they're
covered.
disrupting the education, that's gonna be outside of what their First Amendment rights are
Well,
allowed.
I think that if we were to delete that, if we were to delete disruptive tactics, I personally wouldn't have an issue with it, because further up in the policy, if you look on the third line of the first paragraph, it's such expression should not interfere with the educational program or present a health or safety hazard.
Yes.
And so, that's the whole thing, right? Like, you don't get to disrupt other people's ability to get an education. You don't get to put other folks in a
Harm's
health or
way.
safety in harm's way. And so I would be comfortable deleting that, because we know that the rest of the policy is going to continue to, protect kids getting their education. And I also agree that disruptive is one of those words that there's a lot of discretion there in terms of what it means. And the whole point of policy is to add clarity. And so,
The other side of that coin is to clarify disruptive tactics by saying
Yes.
disruptive tactics that
Yes.
do the exact things that were enumerated up in that line you just referenced.
you could do that too, yeah. Disruptive tactics that interfere with the educational program or present a health or safety hazard.
I think whatever we do, whether it's define it more or take it out, we can't leave it as it is. Like, the very nature of activism is a disruption. So either we're gonna say what a disruptive tactics is, or we're gonna take it out. And that also takes me to the next part of it that says advocate violation of the law or school regulations, because again, it may be challenging a very narrative or law or regulation that they don't perceive to be adequate. So again, if we're gonna define it more, I'm fine with us defining it more for what it would look like, or removing it altogether, but like, that's the very nature of what activism is. So we're saying, hey, you can, protest, but don't for real protest, like,
Yeah.
it's a little.
I'm fine either way with either defining it more or deleting it, because I think, for me, the clarification is just, you can't interfere with the educational program or present a health or safety hazard, but you may have other ways of accomplishing, and I agree with you, like, activism is not just like, hey, everybody, can you, sometimes it is, but I don't know, what is the consensus here in terms of
We've
deletion,
raised,
status quo, or further definition?
well, we've raised two different topics here.
Yes.
Right? I have different feelings about each of these two things here.
Yes.
And so I'll get them out. I'm in favor of clarifying, so I don't find it to be harmful to say, in general, you shouldn't promote disruptive activities. I know there are extreme circumstances, and if we want to clarify what a disruptive activity is, we've got great language already in this policy. So that's just my thoughts there.
Yeah.
Advocating for violation of law is one I can't. I think that's very appropriate as written. I mean, given what it says, there are those extreme circumstances, and I don't think whether we have a policy or not, if there's an extreme circumstances is going to stop someone from protesting or raising their voice or getting their message out in a way that's not disruptive, as we've defined it.
And I agree with your, the point that there's two different pieces. As far as the disruptive tactics, I personally would say just remove it, because it's already clarified in the previous statement. And I agree with you on advocate violation of the law. I can't support students advocating to break laws as a general rule.
But it doesn't stop at advocating for a violation of law. It says or school regulation. So if you think about the two young ladies that talked about how the dress code was being enforced for women that create, or for young women that created disparities, like, there's no law that says that has to happen, but it doesn't say, it says or school regulation, which makes that an attachment to the law. So either we need to separate those or reevaluate. I mean, and we can take it back to the governor's committee to talk about what that language overall should look like. But I do think it's worth us reevaluating before we set it as a policy.
I would suggest, I would say take off the school regulations, because my concern is advocating for,
The law.
to violation of law. So, but I think that that's it may be more appropriate to take it back to the committee for them to sort that out. It may be more effective that way, but.
So that's right, and I'll note, those two young ladies, I think, did a great job by coming to the school board, and they didn't say, forget that, we're gonna continue to violate, we're gonna come here and get it changed.
Yeah.
And they used a great forum to come in and get the boards and the Colt team's attention for that. And they didn't say, we're not gonna do anything about it, we're gonna continue to violate. What was then the dress code, appropriate or not? I'm only offering this up for the governance committee to go back, and it sounds like maybe come back with some clarified language to talk through.
I would support that.
I think we can do that. And thank you for pointing it out, because I think this is, again, I know that central office went through this, we went through this, and now we're but,
These are
we need to,
perceptions,
yeah,
yeah.
so thank you for that. Okay, so we will add that to the governance to-do list.
The 6,000.
Excellent.
Yep.
Nothing on 5222. I'm sorry, 5722. Again, we had a long discussion, but nothing there. Nothing on 5724. Nothing on 5730. Nothing on 5751. Nothing on 5771. Nothing on 5772. Nothing on 5780. Nothing on 5830.
I had a question on that.
Sure.
Or something that just entered my mind as I was reading that.
And Ms. Dufour, this one's entitled Student Fundraising?
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yes. So there were some crowdfunding activities referred to in one of the paragraphs, raising funds for a specific classroom or school activity, including extracurricular, and that made me think of classroom teachers who have wish lists. And I did not know if that fit into this policy anywhere, and that it's not technically student fundraising, but it is. It falls into the definition here of what the crowdfunding activities can be under this policy. So just wondering if others had thoughts on that or concerns. I know many teachers have a wish list, so it's not just a here or there. I think a lot of teachers use it quite regularly, so
And
curious.
is your concern that we've accidentally would be prohibiting that here or limiting it?
Yeah, I don't know if that would in fact be a result of this policy, but I kind of interpreted it that way, so that's why I'm asking for clarification, if other folks have some insight or thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think what we don't want is for our superintendent to have to fly spec everybody's Amazon wish list. I'm
Right.
sure that you've got more exciting things to do with your time. Perhaps this is one that we could pull off, and then, because it does also say they're all subject to the administrative guidance 6605. And so maybe if we were able to get a hold of the 6605, that would answer some of these questions.
But doesn't this title start with student fundraising? If a teacher makes a wish list, isn't that the teacher doing it? That's not the student fundraising for that space.
There's another policy.
Right, but there's a crowdfunding activities says what raising funds for a specific classroom. So that's where I agree with what you're saying, but it was not clear to me from the crowdfunding portion.
So I would add two things. One, this would, because it's a student fundraising, this would be like a kid having a GoFundMe page to buy books for Mrs. Smith's classroom.
Okay.
And so there is a separate policy, I think it's in the 6,000s, that deals with how teachers do it.
Thank you.
The second thing is, from my perspective, and I'm not gonna have the time or the interest in reviewing everyone's Amazon cart, but having a policy that puts bumpers and guidelines for how we do this, I think is really important. Because right now, we don't have one, and so it's kind of Julie trying to track some of these things down, and some of it is for the protection of the staff members as well. Because if you don't do it right as a professional, then you can get yourself in trouble too. And so having a policy that helps us put those guardrails up, I think is important.
So am I hearing that then my concern is really not this because it's student fundraising versus teacher, so that's fine. I
So
appreciate that distinction.
Yeah, this would be like if a kid wanted to do that for the
Gotcha.
teacher's classroom. The 6,000 one is if a teacher wants
So
to.
we will be looking at that down the road.
And
Thank
perhaps
you.
if we added the word student in front of crowdfunding.
Well, the whole thing
I
is
mean, I know
student
it is,
fundraising, and I mean,
yeah.
I recognize that when I read it, but.
Still, I don't, maybe you guys could take a look.
Yes.
I hate giving homework, but
Hey,
I
that's what committees are for.
don't want to actually
Committees
prohibit
are
a
for-
student that wants to
Yeah.
better a teacher's classroom.
Yeah.
Unless there's a valid reason that they shouldn't fundraise for books or supplies or
Yeah.
anything like that.
So we've discussed this, I thought, Nicole, in the foundation
Ooh,
committee meeting, and I was concerned
yes.
about administrative oversight. And I thought we had given ourselves homework to create a process and a form.
Well, that's for the GLEF, for the GLEF fundraising, but not for this, which would be external to GLEF.
But we talked about the wish list for teachers.
Yes,
So maybe we need to go back.
yeah. And we are talking to GLEF on Wednesday.
And
so-
cross-reference.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we can make this into governance homework as well.
Yep.
But if it is possible, because we don't have access, and I don't know, do you have access to the administrative guidance yet, or guidelines yet?
I don't know if we do or not.
Okay.
If we do, I haven't read them.
I was just saying,
That's right.
So the plan is that we'll have all of the administrative guidelines, which will be given to the board, but are not required to have board approval.
Yes, I just didn't know because it's,
So the
this,
policies is what the board will implement.
yeah,
The administrative guidelines is what Bill will implement on how we're going to meet these policies.
yes,
So he's going to start going through that with Neola,
yeah.
our contact with Neola, so that when you bring all of this back to the board, everything will go at once.
Thanks.
So you'll have the guidelines and the policies,
Yeah.
but you're only approving the policies.
The only reason why I asked is because this is one of the few times where it specifically references the administrative guidance, and so,
We may have access to those bills. I just have not looked at them because we haven't gotten to that point yet.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Administrative guidance 6605,
exactly,
because it's not on the internet.
yes. And so, yeah, that's what,
So it may behoove us not to have that sentence or
yeah,
reference whatever in there.
That's a great point. It's up to us to make sure we're not conflicting,
yeah,
but we don't have to
Well,
cross-reference it.
then, if we're saying students can do X, Y, and Z, they have to be able to find out what X, Y, and Z are.
yes,
And how to do it.
yeah, and so perhaps deleting that.
So having AG 6605, which led me to an Attorney General opinion about private investigators.
Yeah, I wonder.
From Frank Kelly, so it's
That's exactly right. That's where my head was at at
Yeah,
first.
I was too. So, okay, well, I think we can make that governance homework, and it will help us in our GLEF endeavors. Okay.
Thank you once again to those of you serving on this
We
committee.
won't call.
Yeah. That's right.
but I love it.
Thank you for
You're welcome.
Yeah, Val and
Well, and thank you to Central Administration for doing this round two, at least. Nothing on 58.440, so no secret societies, folks. They're not allowed, no secret societies. I know, because it's their secret.
We have our way.
Nothing on 5850 or 5855, 5870. Nothing on 5880. Nothing on 5895. Anything else?
I don't know, 5880.
5880.
All requests for public performances by students require the approval of the principal. Like,
I assume this means on school ground.
Yeah, as part of the district. Yeah.
no, this is throughout the community.
So if
Like-
the kids want to play recorders at the fall festival, there's a process.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. What I'm saying is it's super big.
All requests for public performances by, like, high school student groups. I agree, that is pretty vague, now that you point that out.
Yeah, like, I don't care if 3 kids want to start a garage band.
Yeah.
That's nothing. They're still using their talents and skills with, sharing it with the community, whether the community wants it or not, I imagine.
I think that's fair, and I think that if we were to delete that sentence, it doesn't change anything, which is, we still need a process for parental permission when it's the school sending the kids to play the recorders at the color cruise. And so I would be fine with,
Yeah, that's the hard part, like that sentence, all requests for public performances by students require the approval of the principal. That could be like, you know, are the Rotarians asking for 74 kids with recorders to show up and play hot cross buns,
yes.
or not?
I wonder if you put all requests for school-affiliated public performances by students.
I think that's all,
Yeah.
I think that fixes it, yes.
That's it.
So all requests for for school-affiliated public performances by students require the approval of the principal. That sounds great. The end. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you. I know this is a lot of work, but we appreciate it.
Now you can pay the bills.
How far are we through this process? How many more chapters?
I think they end at the 8,000s.
Oh,
So we
so
have-
close.
Yeah,
3 to
more
go.
days. And actually, we have a calendar laid out so that we would approve a lot of them in January. So we'll continue this process and we would, actually, we approve them in December for implementation in January, Kim? Or is it approval in January?
I think we're going for the January meeting, so at the governance meeting, you will adopt all of the new global policies. So the entire policy book will be brought to you at the governance meeting.
In hard copy? No, I'm just kidding. Please, not hard copy.
So many huge.
So we're almost done.
That's great. It's been a lot of work, but that'll be valuable for a long time.
Yes.
It is bill payment time, as we've all now hinted at. Our next item is approval of payment of capital funds invoices, if there is a motion.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of capital fund invoices in the amount of $248,750.46 as presented.
Support.
Moved by Mr. Shiflett, and I think support by Mr. Fort. And Denise offered to offer commentary from our board bond advisory meeting tonight, if you would, Denise.
Yep, so this capital funds are primarily the high school fine arts, the concrete and elevator primarily as well.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0. And next is approval of payment of sinking fund invoices. Is there a motion?
I move the Grand Ledge Public School Board of Education approve the payment of sinking fund invoices in the amount of $91,844.42 as presented.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Kirkendall and supported by Dr. Glasgow. Ms. Dufort.
So the sinking fund is for the pole barn out at the track, the carpet in the new classrooms in this building here in Sawden, scanning of the roof for determining what needs to be done as far as down the road repairs.
Right. Great, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All
Did
right,
you hit that, Dr. Glasgow? Down the road repair.
that sounded like planning.
Proactive.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes 6-0 as well. We're to the approval of payment of Delta Center life safety invoices.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of Delta Center life safety invoices in the amount of $189,780.01 as presented.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Shannon and support by Ms. Kirkendall. Ms. DeFort.
That is for the fire suppression system at Delta Center.
Which will be open and ready for business by the start of the school year, which is great news. A lot of work has been done over the course of this summer. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0. Approval of payment of Proposal 1, Series 2 bond invoices. Is there a motion?
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of Proposal 1, Series 2 bond invoices in the amount of $1,111,127.83 as presented.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Shannon, support by Mr. Shiflett. Ms. DeFort.
So these invoices are for Delta Center and Wacusta. And I do have a breakdown by building if people are interested in specifics, because it is such a large ticket motion for such a large amount. But I don't want to take the time to go through all of them. There are 10 contractors pieces that are for Wacusta, and the rest is Delta Center.
That's great. Wacusta, which had its groundbreaking just last week, so progress continues to be made. Other comments, questions? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 6-0. And we're to the payment of Proposal 1, Series 3 bond invoices. I think this is our first set of payments under these bonds, if there is a motion, that is.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of Proposal 1, Series 3 bond invoices in the amount of $7,183.34 as presented.
Support.
Moved by Ms. Shannon, support by Mr. Shiflett, and Ms. DeFort, if you would.
Proposal 1, Series 3 is for the high school.
All right. Anything else? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. And to the payment of Proposal 2, Series 1 bond invoices, if there's a motion.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of Proposal 2, Series 1 bond invoices in the amount of $30,414.14 as presented.
Support.
Thank you.
Moved by Mr. Shiflett, support by Ms. Kirkendall and Ms. DeFort.
And that is for the Beagle Pool, and should be the final billing for that.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 6-0. And to the payment of Proposal 2, Series 2 bond invoices, if there's a motion.
I move the Grand Ledge Public Schools Board of Education approve the payment of Proposal 2, Series 2 bond invoices in the amount of $386,048.72 as presented.
Support.
Ms. Kirkendall moves, and I'll throw that one to Dr. Glasgow for support, and Ms. DeFort.
So that is to do with the fine arts. It is getting close to closing that out. We should have the final billing for the fine arts in August
More great news.
at the next meeting.
Right, yes, that's right, this month. So, okay, any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, that passes 6-0 as well. That concludes the action items, and we are now again to comments from staff and board. Start on this side of the room again, if there is anyone that would like to speak. Dr. Barnes?
I'd just like to add, we had a comment regarding our achievement and test scores. And just to remind the board and anyone listening that My School Data is the site that has our test scores. There are a multitude of sites that people can look at that have all sorts of rankings on them. But from a school perspective, what we're really looking at is our achievement data on the SAT and the M-STEP. We're looking at our strategic plan data, and we're looking at you know, our athletic and AP and all those types of success. And so we simply can't track what every site says about the district. But again, if folks listening were interested, or again, the board, My School Data is the website that we would look at. And we do compete very well with Okemos and East Lansing and all the schools in the mid-Michigan area. So that's my only comment. And then I appreciate the feedback and input on the strategic plan process, and then also on my evaluation tonight as always. So thank you for the good conversation around that. It's fun to come to a board meeting and discuss those things which are really integral to the work we do in the school. So I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Barnes.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Ms. Kirkendall.
Hey there. So a couple things. One, great groundbreaking ceremony for Wakusta. That was just fantastic to be there. There are some kids that are sad about the hill that is missing there, but others that are excited to see what their new school will look like in a couple years. So, or a couple months really. They'll be in it in a couple years. So that part was really awesome. As we are gearing up for school to start in like 14 days, is that like, we're not too far off, right? Like
August 30th.
August 30th, yeah, like that is happening much sooner than I anticipated. I'm just going to share some of the things that I've heard, some of the things I've experienced. One, yeah, open house the night before school start, not a fan. At 5:30 to 7:30 or whatever to go to bed and get up the next day. If we could space that out a little bit, that would be ideal, just throwing that out there. Also, access to the teacher-specific supply list before the night of school starting. That would be ideal. So for some schools, the building supply list is already available, but the teacher supply list is not available. And as things have already been on sale for like the past 5 weeks or so, access to getting those in advance and feeling a little more prepared is not there. And for many people, we don't know who our teachers are even going to be yet for school to be starting in roughly 2 weeks. So for those of us that are a bit more of a planner, maybe a little bit more type A, this feels a little stressful to wait until like, you know, days before school starts to be able to prep our kids and get ready and kind of throw that out there. So I'm just gonna put that out there for us to keep in mind and consider. Also more concerns about the bus route. We already know that information will be coming, so no shade from Martez or anyone working in that space, but that's always a challenge to know what buses are coming, when they're gonna be coming, how long your child's gonna be riding on that bus. So that's also coming up in the community. And then just being mindful that this is a stressful time for a lot of people. Some are still trying to enjoy their last few moments, their gleaming moments of summer, whether that is students, parents, or our professional staff. So please be kind and gracious to people. We all coming back to school and don't want to. So I'm just gonna put that out there. Everybody is in this space where we're transitioning back. So we are grateful for our staff and administration that are going to be happy to welcome all of our students back, and we look forward to another very successful year. That's all I got.
That's great. Thank you, Ms. Kirkendall.
So I just wanted to reiterate that thanks for the governance team. I have worked on that committee, and having had some experience working with Neola, I knew this was going to be a major procedural event for everyone involved, and the tediousness of it can't be emphasized enough. So thank you, I appreciate greatly, and I think it's really important that we've taken the time to do this. Our policies were very outdated, in my opinion, and needed to have this done, so thank you. I have heard lots of great things being ready for the next year. I want to commend our entire administrative team in having things ready, having buildings cleaned, having the people in place, having the secretaries coming in and getting started already, and organizing all those last-minute adds and deletes, which makes it so difficult to put out that information early. It's really a catch-22, but certainly understand both sides of that. I'm very excited to hear that Delta Center is ready to go. This was really going to be a pretty tight timeline, and the fact that everything has been accomplished with just a couple very minor pieces left. The access road is in. They've really been working hard as a team. I wanted to thank John Piper, who's been, I think, instrumental in making sure that those things are staying on track. And I think sometimes that his role gets a little bit overlooked. I'm just really excited. I've heard from a lot of kids and parents who are all ready to go back. They're looking forward to going back. So it's interesting, the perspective on that piece from lots of different individuals. But I think we're starting the year stronger than we've been in a while, and I attribute that to the dedication of the staff and our administrators who have been really on top of all these different, so many different moving parts. So thank you to all of you.
What was that? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fort. And Ms. Shannon.
Sure. So hot off the presses from Pete Buchholz, the bus schedules will be out on Saturday, the 19th. Just got an email.
We got that email while we were here tonight.
We are on the case.
You can tell
so
the parents in here.
Yes,
Like,
yeah, I know not everybody is a bus person. Some people are walkers, some people are drivers, some people are observers. So for those of us who are in bus land, also a type A planner person, so excited to see that. Wacusta was great. Thank you for an excellent event. Thank you, Mr. Ellsworth, for getting the word out for everybody there. It seems like, fingers crossed, buses were doing well in terms of having enough and drivers and everything for the year. So I'm seeing nods and heads yes. So, okay, that's good news. Feeling good about that. I promised my fourth grader that I would say she would like a hydration station in the Delta Center cafeteria because it's one of those old ceramic white drinking fountains. And she says, it is gross and it doesn't work very well. And I said, don't worry, I'm going to a board meeting and I'll tell the superintendent, who's like president of the school district, about it. But I don't know if he's gonna be able to do anything because it's all part of a bigger plan, and Delta Center is not the only school and is not the only drinking fountain in the district. So I promised her that I would say that. What's that? Do some crowdsourced fundraising? She would.
We're putting a stop to that.
It was only the promise of pizza that kept her at her grandparents' house as opposed to coming here for public comment and making a spirited for a second request for that. So that, thank you for Wacusta. And happy anniversary, Dr. Barnes. It's been 1 year since you took over, and so congratulations. I know we all went through some difficult times. This has been a very good year, and thank you for your leadership, and it's much appreciated. I think that we are in an excellent position, and thank you, Central Admin, for making that happen. I am excited about 23, 24. My kids are sometimes excited to go back to school, sometimes not. Depends on how close to a pool or an ice cream cone they are. But when they miss their friends, they are very ready to go back. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, she's so funny. I'm thinking of Bruce and Kathy Dunn.
Oh, boy.
And that's why I'm laughing.
Pizza bribers
Had a
themselves.
wonderful opportunity to dance and have dinner at the 50th reunion, where I realized that I'm almost old enough to be your mom when I saw your mom there, Sexton graduate.
Class of 71.
I tell you, and my husband is the class of 70. So I lead with that because it felt like family.
Yeah.
And they were so happy to see me. Wacusta felt like family. To have your mom hug me and be so glad to see me. We're creating community, and that's my point. And it is so refreshing, given the 2 years that I've experienced. I've only experienced 2 years, and it was interesting. However, where we are today, I feel included, I feel welcomed, and I think a lot of that has to do with all of these folks and Dr. Barnes, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the fact that we have data, and the data at LCC shows quite a bump in the math scores of your 2023 graduates. And I think that we have to continue to share that information and share the data so that folks understand that Grand Ledge School District is doing very well, and there's always room for improvement. So I appreciate the hard work. And lastly, I'll just say, no, I'm not going to ask for the numbers, but I will tell you anecdotally, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, I have gotten at least 5 phone calls from parents who are just looking for questions to be answered because they are considering Grand Ledge under school of choice. And I appreciate the fact that they're doing their research. We've done a great job with the communications, the marketing, hiring amazing staff, and people are taking notice. And we are high on the list in terms of school of choice. So thank you, everyone, for the great job we're all doing.
Thank you. Wow. Team brought it tonight. I get to say ditto. It's like, I know, that was very thorough. So I also got to participate in the Wacusta groundbreaking, but I didn't want to just highlight that one item. So I love the district, but I haven't found a lot of people that are, the students that say, I can't wait to go back. Not just yet. I don't think they're, yes, that's great.
The pool's ice cream.
That's right. Well, also, I left from, there was already a high school soccer scrimmages happening tonight with the junior varsity and varsity. So in some ways, we're back. So, right, that team's already been organized, and I'm sure others are as well, and the bands are back, and we're hearing them practice. So there are students already putting in the hours and already competing. So it is. So just offering that up. But that's all I had for tonight. So if we're good, we're into future topics. One of which was already mentioned. First day is a half day, and that is Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. Our next regular meeting is Monday, August 28th at 6 o'clock here in this room. And then school open houses, noting those. I'm sure that there is information on our district website for that as well. But the intermediate and middle and high school are 4:30 to 6 p.m. Tuesday, August 29th. And elementary schools will be 5:30 to 7 p.m. also Tuesday, August 29th. And I know there are orientations and things happening even this week for the high school and probably others. So I will be there Wednesday morning. And with that, anything else? Then we are